everyone. It's Beth Stelzer here, founder of Save Women's Sports. I have a very interesting guest to bring to you today. It's someone that I met on Twitter. Their name is Tina, and I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves and give you a bit about them.
Well, very good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tina. I'm an ex-British disability sports athlete. I've got 3 British records to my name. I am transsexual, so therefore I've crossed the great divide from male to female, although in the real world there is no such thing as a sex change. You can't physically change your sex, it's only a mental health issue. I've come on today to talk with Beth to sort of put a bit of a viewpoint across of my particular stance on why women's sports should remain a safe same-sex environment to promote women and girls in a place where they can feel safe and they can compete evenly with each other without the introduction of the male influence coming in various guises under whatever banner they want to call it. It's called the transgender movement or the transgender ideology. In my opinion, it's more of a cult than a science-based reality. Yeah? And that's the way I feel about it. So if we keep things in the real world, we've got to understand that males are stronger than females in the general population. So coming over into if I came over into women's sports, it would give me massively unfair advantages, which is wrong from the outset. It truly is. There are so many possibilities that people can come in for various reasons. They don't always come in with the best intentions.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, mental health does create a lot of problems for a lot of people. I've had gender reassignment. I've got a gender recognition certificate and I've got a new birth certificate. So technically, I'm legally female in the UK. However, whilst that gives me certain rights and a position of fortune, it doesn't mean that I'm just going to go pounding in onto women's sports and try and validate myself and gain some narcissistic nature from it, so that I can pinch medals off people. Yeah, it's wrong.
So you come from almost what's seen as a controversial status here. From what we see in the media, it sounds like most people who identify as transgender would support males competing in female sports.
Seemingly that is the case. Although, having said that, a lot of the people who are truly gender dysphoric from the trans side of things are not particularly going to go down that route too much from my experience. Although I was involved with British athletics, there was an instance in 2008 when I was competing that with the women's competition was taking place. I was talking to a couple of the British athletes, and they were bemoaning a Czechoslovakian, which is now Czech Republic and Slovakian Republic. One of their athletes was transgender and was competing in the female category and was winning everything, broke all the world records, and was just taking all the medals.
Shame.
There's a massively unfair advantage thing that's been going on for a long time. However, most of the transgender now are not necessarily seeking medication. They're certainly not seeking
It's a really good point to make.
any surgeries, and it's all to do with just taking a few hormones, maybe, lowering testosterone, maybe, and then just jumping into the women's estate and taking over. Now, I know the numbers aren't particularly massive at the moment, but with all the self-IDs and everything that's going on around the world, this is a doorway waiting to be broken down with force.
Exactly. It's a floodgate that will be forced open, and
there will be a floodgate that opens at some point, which is a very sad state of affairs that these males who are probably pretty bang average at what they did before are then going to be super competitive in the women's sports, and that is absolutely unnecessary. It's unforgivable. It's just not about fairness and ethics. It's about the huge physical advantages from male puberty.
Isn't it
If
absurd
anyone,
that we even have to have this conversation?
it's absolutely insane, Beth, that we're having a conversation about this, because it's a ridiculous conversation in 2021. But here we are, landed with it. But we've been looking and staring down the barrel of this for quite a number of years. There's a lot of sports organisations around the world now that have got a huge inclusivity policy that's been written in 5, 6, 7 years ago, and all they've done is evolve that policy to suit the narrative of allowing males into the female sports. Now, this is not done in the name of diversity, inclusivity, call it what you will. It's not done in the name of science. It's done in the name of hearsay. We think this, we think that, we want affirmation, and that's all we want. And there's no scientific input comes in from these organisations that have been garnered by these bodies, basically stonewalled into it, because Stonewall appears to be the main driver behind everything. They dropped the LGBT in general terms, and they've gone for the TQ plus, not the intersex.
That's a whole nother conversation we could get into, couldn't we? That great divide. But yeah, there is a huge drive, a lot of funding behind this movement. And it did start less than 10 years ago. And we're just now seeing it ramp up to what it could be. And it's scary.
It's very scary indeed. I mean, they've got the clause into just about every organisation that matters. In the UK, they've got the clause into governments, companies, corporations, sports bodies, sports teams. It's gone on the high street, so you got your banks are all involved with it, or your high street shops are involved with it. My local football club absolutely buys into it all the time, and they pay money to this charity called Stonewall, who are no longer a charity. They're a multi-million business, and they're driving an ideology. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is not based on fact. A lot of it is based on assertion.
Sports should be based on facts, not feelings. And you have Stonewall over there, and we have the ACLU and the Human Rights Campaign here kind of doing the same thing. And so we see that this is an international attack on women's rights.
Absolutely agree, Beth. There is an attack on international women's rights across the board, full stop. That's it, end of story. It shouldn't even be up for debate on this one. Males do not belong in the female domain for sports or across the board anywhere else, to be
exactly. I am so grateful that you are speaking up and using your voice to say, hey, it's not us all.
No, it isn't. I mean, most of us, we live basic lives, and we just get on with it. We've got to work, some will have families, some will have children, and they'll just go on with everyday life the same as you and every other person on this planet. They would just have no agenda for anything else, and all they want to do is live, be loved, and be happy. But unfortunately, there's a huge gathering now, especially in the UK, and I know it is in America, for this trans rights are human rights. Well, there are no rights here in the UK that trans people do not have.
Exactly.
I'd love to know what they are, because I haven't come across one yet.
There's a transgender athlete that likes to say that sport is a human right. Well, sport might be a human right, but choosing what sex you are is not.
That is correct. I mean, you can't pick and choose what sex category you want to go and play in, because you're not very good at what you did before, or you feel as though I'll win at this will make me look good. Watch me on the world stage getting a medal around my neck with the flag coming down and the national anthem being played. How wonderful. How wrong. It's just not the way to do it. There are many ways.
Very wrong.
There are many ways. There are so many ways for that to not happen. What it needs basically is the male category to open itself up properly, for that to accept diversity, for that to be inclusive of all from that sex. No matter how you identify, no matter what modification you've made to your body, it's a mental health issue, full stop. You cannot change your sex, but you can be accepted within your diversity within that group.
That's one of the questions that I had for you, is what your suggested solution was. So you're more into opening up the male category, which has kind of always been in sports. Males has been seen as an open category. If women want to compete there, or whoever can. But how do you feel about a
Absolutely.
mixed category, like opening up a men's and women's and then a separate open, like a mixed? USA Powerlifting has done this recently, opened an MX category, which is open to anyone, however they want to identify.
I think that would be a reasonably workable solution. There's also within the male category, you will have, with the diversity, you also have different kinds of abilities that go with it. So like disability sports, you're put into a certain category and you work against a particular record of what that category is capable of achieving. So therefore, you work against that record. So whatever time or weight or distance you put into that, it goes against the point system. It's similar in a way to decathlon, so that you can then build points up or build an ability up to be competitive within that group. So the men's category could be open, and a trans woman could technically take a man's place. Now, wouldn't that be a joy in that respect? Because then would men start fighting back and then saying, we don't like this when trans women are taking our medals, but it's all right for them to take women's medals. The patriarchal control over the whole situation is where we've truly got a big, big problem. There's no equality. Equality isn't there. It was all well and good trying to give women equality, saying, well, you've got certain sports now in the Olympics, they couldn't run the marathon until reasonably recent times. It seemed as if it's too far for women. It was so patronising. It was so patronising the way the patriarchy has treated women over the years when it comes to sports. So women get their own sex category. Now men, the male patriarchy is dumping their people into it. Oh, we can't deal with it. We don't cope with it. We don't know what to do with it. Well, don't dump it on women. Get yourself your own house in order first. Stay in lane with it. Sort yourselves out. Please get a grip on what your policy is with inclusivity in your own group. You're not going to start including trans men in there, are you? For sure. Absolutely not. Because it'd make too much of a stir within the male sex category. So if we're going to include trans men into women's sports, trans men are still females. But if you've been on testosterone, then you'll need to get into a separate category because then you've got too many advantages. Exactly. But if you're just competing and you live as a trans man without medication, then you can, in my opinion, compete in the women's sports because you're still technically female. And you'll always be female if you'll never not be female. Right. I know it's controversial. A lot of people won't like what I've just said. Exactly. But at the end of the day, it's so cannot crazy change sex. I've had gender reassignment. I've not changed my sex. I've appeased a mental health condition of dysphoria. And I am at peace with myself now. And I'm comfortable with myself. And I feel good about myself. And I'm a happy person.
And I don't think anyone here wants to take that away from you. And it's sad that we get painted as being such mean bigots. And that's another thing that I wanted to get on. Have you seen much harassment from your community or just in general for having this stance and speaking out?
The general consensus is for a lot of dysphoric trans people over here is they don't want to be part of this. They're not interested in it. They've just been thrown under the umbrella of trans, and it's such a sweeping descriptor or non-descriptor, should we say? Because at the end of the day, it's a social gender identity. It's how you wish to be portrayed in the public domain, and that's fine. And that's the way that everyone should have that opportunity to do so. So whether you're non-conforming, which is generally what it is, to stereotype, then be free to be who you want. But at the end of the day, you've also got to respect that women's rights need that utter respect, and it needs to be understood. You can't go just trampling in and jumping all over it. You've got to have that respect. Unfortunately, respect has been taken away. Therefore, women's rights are being eroded as a result. But there's no big cohesive group that's pulling together and says, we're not letting this happen, because the erosion started many years ago through the media, and the media is mostly complicit in this because they're the one that drive it. All you'll ever hear is a poor trans woman on TV being interviewed, and you will only ever hear one side of the story. You only ever do. There's never a counteraction to it. A woman cannot speak about it. A transsexual will not be invited onto it. we're so few and far between in the UK that our numbers are basically meaningless and insignificant to the trans ideology umbrella. We don't count because we've gone down the route of medication and surgeries in general. We're quite divisive within that community because we've made that step for that.
So essentially, become a silent.
We're a pariah in some ways.
Yeah.
We've become a pariah in some ways. We're no longer desirable. We're not to be followed. We're not really the way forward. The way forward is to allow men to do whatever they want within the women's world. I mean, I've got a gender recognition certificate. There's less than 6,000 of those ever been issued in the UK. According to government figures, that figure could be undervalued. Maybe by about 20,000, because a lot of people didn't bother going for it. Whether it was the cost element, which I don't particularly see that, or they were just happy with what they've done and what they've got and the lives they lead. It's not always a necessity to do that. But the trouble is now we've got over 500,000 people claiming to be trans or trans identifying or something along those lines. All of a sudden, you've gone tenfold. You've gone tenfold of people. That is a massive, massive thing. But the trouble is then that tenfold suddenly becomes powerful. And once they get the claws into companies and activism starts getting out of control, without real substance as well, we've got a big problem. We've got a real big problem. Because then it's no longer a case of people who want to fight for equality. It's people who want to take over equality and subdue that equality. And unfortunately, I know Twitter's not always a good gauge on real life. It certainly isn't. It can be a very poor. It can be a very poor indicator.
A very toxic environment.
Levels of abuse, it's very toxic. Levels of abuse at women is absolutely shocking. It really is. And
and
there's
how
never,
they could let that go on.
But women are banned off Twitter for stating biology. Yet men who identify as all sorts of across the spectrum can threaten life.
Talk about murdering us violently, and their accounts are fine.
And then they carry on. So in real terms, there is no real cohesive group in the public domain for women. It's relying on individual women or women's groups fighting as a community, basically, to try and preserve their own rights. In Scotland recently, they've introduced the hate crime bill, which is absolute nonsense. It can carry a jail sentence that comes with it. So if you technically, I'm not saying that I would do, because I most certainly would not do this, but if a woman pointed at a man and laughed at him wearing a dress, she could be, I'm not saying she would be, but it carries a 7-year jail term.
That is so crazy.
Yeah? And yet, on the serious nature side of it, if she's raped by that same man, he may get a lesser sentence. In fact, he probably would get a lesser sentence than that. So that really doesn't add up, does it? So
it's so crazy.
No,
thank you for pointing that out.
Going on. So there's so much going on with laws to try and make everything so super inclusive, but at the cost to women. And it's a very sad state of affairs that we've got to. Now, I know we've gone off the subject of sports a little bit there.
But it's all on the same tree. It's all connected. We all know that.
Well, all the apples are falling from the same tree, but a lot of them are really bad apples, and that's the problem with it. There's some lovely ripe ones, and they're the ones that have got women's rights at heart, and they're the ones that got integrity. And they're the ones that got truth and honesty within them. And they're the ones that see reality.
Well, thank you for standing in the truth, Tina.
Well, I'm just going to get loads of abuse for this anyway. From when you post it, it's going to be like, well, who the hell does she think she is and all that. Great, that's fine. Crack on with that. If that's all you've got to worry about in life, that you want to level abuse in me, fine. I've literally got broad shoulders. Yeah, I've literally got broad shoulders, so it just put more of a duck's back to me. I couldn't care less. One thing I did mention the fact that I'm a disability sports athlete. I'm also tetraplegic, which is why I've gained entry into the sports arena. Tetraplegic in the US is quadriplegic. I broke my neck in a car accident 20 years ago. I'm paralysed from the chest down. I've got limited use of my hands and arms. However, if anybody really fancies a session down the gym, they're more than welcome to come and join me, and I will show them exactly what male puberty has done for me. And I'll tell you what, I'm an absolute beast in the gym.
Yeah, you'll give
I'm
them a
an
run
absolute
for
monster.
it.
And I put a lot of men to shame. Never mind women, I put a lot of men to shame. So to say that there is a good reason for inclusivity, you can lower your testosterone down to 5 nanomils a litre. I think not. I don't produce testosterone. I haven't got
What? A
anything to
woman
produce
isn't a
testosterone
hormone
with.
level? Huh?
That's the hormone level that they're looking at to reduce males down to.
Right. I'm
to
saying a
compete
woman
against women.
isn't a hormone level. We are not a hormone
No,
level.
you're
It
not
doesn't
hormone level.
magically make
Exactly.
us a man, a woman, or a woman, a man by taking
No, it
cross-sex
doesn't.
hormones.
Women are women, and that's it. Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly.
And I just want
Men
to
can't
clarify,
just
I
become
did
a
it from
woman
the
by
start
reducing
that
testosterone.
we had some technical difficulties, and Tina was more than willing to show up in person today, but we are just having massive issues with technology. But here we are still, and I'm
Big
grateful
problem
to have you.
technology. No. You're very welcome, Beth. I'm more than happy to be here. However, I would prefer, obviously, to be face to face, so people can actually see there is me on the other end of the
Well,
camera.
hopefully we'll do a round two and get that figured out.
We will get technology sorted, and we'll make it happen. That is an absolute given. That will happen at some point.
But for now, it's just so important for your voice to be heard, even, you know?
People can hear the voice. They can take from it what they wish. I mean, they can slander me or they can agree with me. I mean, that's fine. That's what debate is about at the end of the day. And that's what principle of an argument is. I'm not arguing for women's sports to be same-sex. I'm demanding that it's kept same-sex. Because at the end of the day, that is the most important part of it all. Just keep it same-sex and work on diversity elsewhere within the male category. If you can do that, we're going to have a happy medium in between, and that's the way it should be. Men have got to step up to the plate and accept it. And like I said to you earlier on, I'm more than happy to compete against men, and I would do, and I will do. If I have to come back and return to sports, which I could quite conceivably do, then I'll go in the men's state, not a problem. I'll beat some of them. I won't beat all of them, because men are going to have an advantage over me now with their full testosterone levels that I can't compete with. However, it doesn't mean that I'm so much weaker than I was then. When I was setting my British record, I wasn't really trying too hard. I was going through the motions. It was a very toxic atmosphere within the disability sports arena. So I didn't try as hard as I should have done or could have done. But I was still good enough for British records in 3 events, which are further than all the women's records in the same world records in the same event. So, and that's me not trying. If I tried, it's quite possible, conceivable I could break world records. Because those world records really haven't gone up much since I set my records. Okay. And my records are still intact within the British framework. So if you put context on that, something I said over 10 years ago, before reassignment, then you can put your bottom dollar on that one. That I'd give it a good whirl and could be very competitive. But I don't wish to be competitive against women. Sure. I wish to be competitive or compete against men. Should I have the option of doing so? So,
as any normal person should.
As any normal person should indeed. I mean, anyone coming from the trans side of things that wants to compete against women has got a big problem with themselves in terms of demanding that they be allowed access into it. It should never happen. It shouldn't even be a discussive point. There shouldn't be any bending rules to allow it to happen. But if we do this, if we do that, if we succeed at getting this level down and that level down, oh, well and good. But you've still got the science that backs up that men are always stronger than women. And that's unfortunately part and parcel of the whole situation.
We don't even need the science here. We are talking about a group of females saying no to males and it not being acknowledged again. Because like you said before, most individuals these days don't have intentions of having surgeries and stuff. So we're talking about most of these athletes are intact male bodies.
They are indeed. 90% of the trans movement are not interested in surgeries. 90% are going to keep what they've got. Well, if you want to keep what you've got and dress how you please and do what you want in life, then that's absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely,
but do not, under any circumstances, expect to be involved in anything to do with women's rights, women's sports, or anything women's safe sex.
I fear that we are conditioning young women to accept male bodies in their normally sex-separated spaces. And I'm not saying that everyone is a threat that identifies in this way, but there will be people who are predators who will take advantage of these rules.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then it gives girls no right to say, hey, what are you doing in my locker room?
Exactly. The world's gone mad. I mean, it should never have got to this position. How it moves on from this? Well, with the ideology, the way it's backed by governments, it's going to be a big battle to repel all this. But look, at the end of the day, women are starting to get organised in the real world. When too much starts happening, then there will be a kickback, and it'll be a big kickback.
I'm seeing the tide turning, Tina. We've had enough. Women are starting to see the truth, and it is just an amazing thing.
Absolutely. I'm pleased about it. I mean, nearly all my friends are exclusively female, female as in the real female sense of the word. Most of them do not see any of this ideology because they're not really party to it, because it doesn't affect them in life. And when I tell them about it, they're like, really? You know, they don't believe me.
Yeah, well, that's half our battle.
This is how it is.
It's education. People aren't aware of the severity of conflating sex and gender identity.
And that's the problem. We've had it recently, and here this week, one of the police forces started using gender identity as one of the 9 protected characteristics on the Equality Act of 2010 in the UK. So they've been studiously reminded that it's not. They haven't taken the post down, but there is a growing realisation that people are starting to understand that, you know, these sorts of things with inclusivity language, it's actually illegal because it doesn't stand up anywhere as a legal requirement for that. Gender identity is not one of the protected characteristics of the Equality Act 2010. Guess what it is? Well, sex. Yeah. So there you go. So they're trying to conflate sex with gender, or gender with sex. So it's trying to make the language confusing. So eventually, if you introduce it, most people are not going to see this kind of thing going on in the background. And once they don't see it, they're not worried about it, because what you don't see, you don't worry about.
Yeah, they're pulling the wool over us. I know. It didn't really
affect. The wool over the eyes is there. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice this was going on until it affected me at this powerlifting competition when I went to the women's state championships, and a male was throwing a temper tantrum basically the whole time because he wasn't allowed to compete. It really threw me down a rabbit hole of like, oh my goodness. Yeah. I think we're seeing the blinders being taken off with things like here in the US. Biden and his executive order on his first day of office with basically erased women's rights, conflating the two, putting gender identity in.
Absolutely. We've seen that from over this side of the Atlantic. You know, we see what goes on in America, and unfortunately, American policy does have a bearing on what goes on with UK policy eventually. it kind of like cascades down and through. I mean, I worked in the US a few years back. Before my accident, and I could see all the idiosyncrasies that were already there, and it was like, oh my God, this is going to be a ticking time bomb. There's going to be an awful lot going on.
Yes.
And the thing is, it floods over to the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
20 years ago, transsexuals were few in number. Trans were just like transvestites or cross-dressers or fetishists.
And now it's this
all
trend.
That sort of stuff. And now it's just one word, trans, and they'll say, well, it's transgender, it's trans, it's crossing all the genders, all 112 of them. It's like, right, okay, then, so you've got 112 different identities.
How dare you place a number on it?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that is the number. So being clued up a little bit with that one. Look, at the end of the day, the identity brigade do not belong anywhere near the sex category.
No, and sports are not a place for a psychosocial experiment to be happening.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic that people have got diversity. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I've got a diversity. mine was a mental health issue. I've conquered that one now, and I'm a happy person as a result of it. But a lot of the social identities of today are nothing to do with that side of it. It's all about publicity. Who can be the next sort of like celebrity to do it? Who can follow them down that rabbit hole? Who's going to be sort of like the champion on Twitter? And look at me, and I've got all these followers now because I'm suddenly trans, and aren't I just fabulous and fantastic? It's narcissistic validation. You know, I hate saying this. It's rich white privilege in very many ways, and it's a disgusting way of looking at it. But unfortunately, it's very much a truthful way of looking at it, and it's a horrible position.
Well, we can see
the really rich are the ones that have driven this. Money's driven it. The male side of it is always the driver.
Let's take a moment to mention Jennifer Billick and her work on the 11th Hour blog. She has written whole articles about the rich white men and the funding and big tech, transhumanism.
Work,
The 11th Hour blog with the number 11, 11th Hour blog. You guys should look that up.
Yeah, I've been following Jennifer for a while, so yeah,
she's amazing.
I'm aware of what she's doing, and it's extremely good work.
Isn't it sickening to see though how this has basically been just pulled over on us?
It's been a stealth operation. It's been going on for over 10 years. It all kicked off originally with a few sort of like, oh, look at these poor people. Transitioning. So the film crew will follow somebody around for a year or something like that. There was a couple of profile celebrities,
almost a victim narrative.
B or C grade celebrities in America that they followed a few people around doing this transition for validation. It was quite sad. It's all look at me where I'm doing. It wasn't really anything other than that side of things. But the Be Kind mantra was suddenly rolled out around about then, and then it became into your monthly magazines aimed solely at women. And it's like, have your hair done like this? Have your nails done like this? You must wear this. You've got to go on that diet. Oh, and by the way, this poor trans person, the victim, once more, is it needs your sympathy and your empathy. And then it started off as well, how would you put it? It started off quite easygoing at first. Then it became a bit more direct. Then it was like, instead of once a 6 months, it was once a month. Then it'd be once a fortnight. Now it's every week. It's a story in a women's magazine. But it's also, then it's not just that. They're also going down the road of having lots and lots and lots of lovely, expensive, feminizing facial surgery to make them look stereotypically female. Obviously, they're going to have breast implants and all that sort of thing. All of a sudden, they're the most magnificent woman on the planet. They're not women. They're men who have got real big mental health problems that feel the need to take their face to a different place and look something else that they think is going to be stereotypical, and then dress themselves in ridiculously stereotypical clothes and heels and etc. etc.
I'm not saying it's a crazy stereotype.
It's a stereotype. It's not a reality. It's a stereotype of something. Reality is male and female sex categories. That's reality. How you portray yourself within that category or come out of that category is entirely your journey, and it's fantastic if a bloke wants to be a woman. Brilliant, but you're not. So don't tell people you are. That you've changed sex or you can become something, and then telling women how to be a woman and how the men are far more womanly than women will ever be. It's absolutely outrageous. But unfortunately, this is where we've got to with social media and the public domain. So the media has really been complicit in driving this over a decade period. So it's been really it's difficult to fight back from that, because like once you've been kind, you find it very difficult to unkind yourself and start fighting back. Yeah?
It is difficult. And it's such a toxic environment with all the harassment. Like, it's absurd to me that I get death threats for this. Like, come on.
I find it absolutely outrageous, Beth. I mean, you know, what sort of society are we living in when people are sending you that kind of threat? I mean, that is just unbelievable. It's unforgivable. It's absolutely no need for it whatsoever. But the trouble is, you report it to the police, they just laugh at you and say, we haven't really got that's not really a crime for that,
it
is
goes
it?
on file. It goes on file.
Yeah, it goes on file, and that's as far as it'll ever go. They just haven't got the power to action things. They just don't have it. They've got so many other things. Police forces have been reduced across countries per se in numbers, so it's all been part of the cost-cutting exercise. There's also the brainwashing exercise of it, where it's like everything's a hate crime then, if it's
absolutely complete women. Gaslighting by this ideology.
It is proper gaslighting with ideology, I totally agree. It's a hate crime as long as it's not against a woman. If it's a hate crime, it's something that's bad's been said about a biological male. No matter how they identify, then all of a sudden it's a hate crime. Now, I know it's a controversial thing saying that, right? But there is too much truth in that. And it's always a one-sided story you ever hear. And this is where the problem is. You will never get a balanced argument. Because if a woman wants a balanced argument with facts, she's not platformed, she's cancelled, she's called all the names under the sun.
Exactly.
J.K. Rowling has been on the receiving end of some absolutely disgusting stuff. I'm trans. I'm still waiting for somebody to show me any passage of writing that she's done that denounces trans people. I haven't found it myself, and I'm still waiting for somebody to point out where that is. And it just shows you a lot of what they say is built on fantasy. It's built on fiction.
It's lies. By agreeing with this ideology, by being nice, you are complying with a lie.
Absolutely, I know a lot of women are complicit in it. With it, even blue ticks on Twitter are complicit with it. Women, but at the end of the day, they're going to get cancelled if they don't agree with it. If they don't follow that ideology, they will lose. They will lose their livelihood. So they'll lose a job. How are they going to pay a mortgage? How are they going to get another job?
Sponsorships,
it could be a blacklist. You don't know that exactly. There's so many differentials that could cause women so many problems. It doesn't affect the men. The men aren't on the receiving end of this. They're not going to be struggling.
No, because let's admit, if there is a woman that identifies as a man and entered into man sports, it would be very, very hard, even with their doping, basically, that they're doing by taking the testosterone, to get anywhere in the men's category.
It'd be impossible in real terms. To have not gone through a male puberty.
We've seen Chris Mosier try to get into the Olympics. It doesn't work.
He's never going to compete. No, it won't happen for that individual.
So this is a woman's issue, but we need men to support us. We really need men still. I mean, women need to speak up, but we need a supportive system of everyone.
I totally agree, Beth. It does need that. Unfortunately, there are a few men willing to stick their head above the parapet and come down on the side of women's rights, but there's not enough. There isn't enough. Enlisting the help of gay men involved with it, like it has a mixed bag of effects. Some are really on board with it and quite happy to do it. Others are anti-women anyway, so it's like they're unfortunately, some of them are complicit in sort of like fueling the ideology. Not all, obviously. That'd be an awful thing to insinuate there is all. But there are a few that are not helping the cause.
Right. A few not, but a few that are very helpful, like Mr. Menno. Have you seen him on YouTube? He's quite the phenomenon.
No, I've not.
You'll have to watch that. He's come out with some pretty funny songs and whatnot to help get us all laughing, because sometimes, let's face it, we need to laugh or we're going to cry.
Absolutely, you do. You've got to have some kind of humour in life, and everything shouldn't be serious 24/7. There's got to be a break in it. But the crux of what we've been talking about this afternoon, well, your morning, my afternoon, is the impact. Unfortunately, it's no laughing matter, and it's a very serious one, and it does need a lot of consideration from people who are in a position to do something about it, rather than listen to ideologists stand up for themselves and look at the actual evidence and the facts, and then work from there. I know I've alluded to England rugby recently, but they're trying to introduce now a height limit and a weight limit for trans rugby players to be introduced into below elite level.
Interesting.
At the moment, they're currently. So they're trying to steamroll it. They've done a public consultation, but without the consultation of the public.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is absolutely ironic. They put it on the domain, but hardly anybody knows about it. But their sources behind them, who are helping them to compile what they want to do as inclusivity, a Stonewall, gendered intelligence, and a psychologist who is trans-friendly, and he hasn't even really done the science. It's all assertion and assumption, and there's no real need for them to be going any further down the road because the Stonewall ideology has captured them. Whereas I was involved a little bit following Ross Tucker when he was doing his work for World Rugby. Yeah, and it was Ross's work that resulted in the safety of women within the rugby framework, the elite level, and the exclusion of trans rugby players due to all the obvious things that comes with science, with the weight, the strength, the male puberty, the mass, etc., etc. Just reducing the mass doesn't necessarily reduce the power, so the damage can still be done.
Exactly.
So men are still stronger and faster than women in general terms. So in sport, they're going to be, it's a danger.
Yeah, well,
if there comes a point.
We have contact sports like rugby and boxing, MMA fighting, where it's a serious danger that we can totally see. And then we have sports like mine that are strength sports where we can see like the advantage is huge. 64% is the advantage of males over females when we look at the records in the United States.
Correct.
It's absurd that we are thinking of.
I know it's absurd, but the thing is, I mean, it's still got to be spoken about, and it's still got to be put out in the public domain to a certain degree, because it's got to get the message over to the masses of women, as opposed to the ones who already know about it. Because the ones who know about it are the ones who are going to be following it and trying to do something about it. It's the ones who don't know what's going on is your target audience. And they're the ones who've got to get involved for the kickback, the proper kickback, the one that should come with knowledge.
I hope that you're speaking to that audience right now, hopefully here.
Well, I know I am with you, and there's many that follow me on the Twitter side of things that they're in agreement with that. I know a lot of gender criticals are not liking of people like myself, and I understand that. I'm not holier than thou when it comes to that. I do have an understanding of what their critique is with me. But I also get it from the trans side of things, saying, "Oh well, you're the wrong kind of trans, aren't you?
Exactly.
You should be supporting us." No, I shouldn't be supporting you at all. I should be supporting women's rights, because women's rights are very, very important to me. Not only with the advent of the gender recognition certificate and my birth certificate changing, it also designates me being a legal female in the UK. So therefore, I only get women's rights. I don't have some cherry picking where I just go, "Oh, but I'm a bit more oppressed now that I'm a woman, so I'll just go and cherry pick some men's rights just for myself and have this and have that." I can't. And it's not, I've given that up on the legal side of things. But no, that's the wrong way of saying it. I haven't given it up. That's been part of my dysphoria being alleviated. So with the reassignment, I'm now happy and content with myself. So this is just something that's followed and come with what I've done. I haven't done it with the intention of doing all that, and it's like that's my soul driven. And I haven't done it with the intention of getting into women's sports or into women's safe spaces. But if you pull those barriers down and water it down and get it down to self-ID or something similar to it, where you can just basically get a letter off your doctor and say, "Well, yeah, we're a woman now," and they go, "Right, sorted," and that's all you need. And then everything follows, and you get access into these areas. It's like we talked about before. It opens the doorway for all the wrong kind of people to come through to get validation.
Yes, they will.
I mean, what man who's got an opportunity to shine at something and think, hang on a minute, I can be a women's world champion here and I don't have to really do much. Just take some suppressants for a year, get my levels down, and I can just I can jump on a cycle, I can get on a powerlifting, I can get weightlifting, I can do athletics, I can do the field events. Hang on a minute, this sounds pretty good to me. And then I can be the standing there on the podium, a medal of some description, watching my flag going up and down. That sounds like a good deal to me. So it will encourage certain individuals to come through the door. It will also, like we've mentioned before, encourage predators to come through the door. And we're getting the problem. You've got a big problem in America now in California with transgender
as we say in Minnesota.
Prisoners being moved into the women's estate.
Hundreds of males demanding to be held in female prisons. And already we are seeing females being sexually assaulted by these males. But it's all in the name of inclusivity and niceness.
Yeah, but the patriarchy is quite happy to allow that to happen. That's why they've allowed this legislation to go out. I mean, California is very, very liberal in its outlook, and unfortunately, liberals are not reining it in enough. I say I'm not American, so your politics is yours to discuss amongst yourselves. But as an outsider, seeing what the nature of your two-party makeup is, they're both as divisive as each other, but one may give women a better chance than the others. So
exactly, it's disgusting.
It's
our
very
political
difficult
system,
because then you're being divisive with other issues that come with it. So just putting it all on women's issues, you're probably more Republican. But if you're putting it all on every other issues, then it's more the Liberal Democrat. So it's very difficult.
Unfortunately, it has become a partisan issue in the United States in some ways. But we're working on that. We are seeing more Democratic support as the blinders are coming off. It's become more trendy to be gender critical.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. As long as it's not just a hat people want to put on for one day and then go back the other way a week later and then put
we
the hat
know we
back
have
on again.
plenty of them, especially in our political system here in the United States.
Very much so.
But
very much so.
We'll get there.
Very much so. Lots of tinfoil hats everywhere. Lots of them. So yeah, it's a difficult situation.
And I know that we have a lot of Democratic support, and they are just afraid that their party will basically eat them alive if they support something like this. So we just have to make it a safe space for them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I do follow some things in America, and having worked out there, it's sort of like endeared me a little bit more to the system. But we're not without issues over here. I mean, the UK government is currently a Conservative government, and whilst they're reasonably okay with keeping women's rights as they are, there are always little sneaks and backdoor activities going on. The lobbyists are allowed parliamentarian access. The trans lobbyists are allowed it, whereas women aren't. So if you've got somebody whispering in your ear long enough, or you're fed up with it, you're just going to agree to it.
Exactly.
Then it's like, well, there's nobody countering that one, so this must be true.
Well, thankfully in the UK you have Nicola Williams in Fair Play for Women. They have been doing a lot of work. A lot of
Fair Play for Women have been absolutely fantastic.
I know that I probably wouldn't be here doing this if it wasn't for them kind of showing an example.
Exactly, they've been absolutely superb, and I've been following Nicola and Fair Play for Women for a long time on Twitter, through various platforms. So absolutely brilliant work that's being done there. But
and also in your neck of the woods, my dear friend Kelly J. Keane, Posey Parker.
Oh yeah, Posey, yeah.
She's really done a lot to help encourage people to speak up. I think courage calls to courage, and it takes more bold voices to sometimes get people out of their shells.
It does. I mean, unfortunately, places of learning where we should all be sort of like speaking a proper reality of language, that's been censured. I mean, universities have now become a hotbed of activism. And unfortunately, women are not allowed to speak on certain issues, and then they just won't allow it to happen.
We've seen
So
that here
it's
in the
like, well,
United
hang on a minute,
States. Just
where's your
yes.
free speech gone? So you remove free speech, you've got almost an authoritarian state within a state. It's
Yeah.
like, whoa.
We've become
No,
Orwellian
that's
in a
what
way.
discussion's
But we
about.
saw here
Absolutely.
in a state-funded university in Minnesota yesterday, they held a talk called "Let's Talk About TERFs," and it had a J.K. Rowling picture with
Really?
a circle and a
Oh
line
my
through it,
God.
and it was a whole Zoom meeting about them basically bashing trans exclusionary radical feminists. It was just
Unbelievable.
crazy, the indoctrinating, the
That is crazy.
gaslighting.
I mean, but at the end of the day, TERF is a slur, and yet it goes unchecked.
Exactly.
It goes unchecked. And yeah, that's fine. But you say anything with
I say a man
trans,
isn't a woman, and I'm a transphobic racist bigot.
There's no such thing as transphobia. It doesn't exist. It's bandied around so much, it's become meaningless. It doesn't even, it carries no weight. If you overuse a word without real meaning, then it has no value.
Meaning. Well, and
it's become valueless. But
phobia. It's
still
a fear.
still a
Nobody has
buzzword.
fear. Yeah.
It's a fear. And trans is only an across. So you've got a cross-fear. So you've got a cross-fear of something. So at the end of the day, unless you're going into the root of what the word is and what country it came from originally, it's become a meaningless term. It's become meaningless. It truly has. But it's thrown around with wild abandon at anyone and everyone that doesn't agree with an ideology. And it is almost gained a cult status in real terms. And because of that, it's very difficult to break it down because those within that framework are preaching a mantra that will not be changed. Even with facts, won't change it. It's based on assertion and what they think you should know.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it feels a lot like a cult to me as well. And we need to get people before they drink the Kool-Aid.
Unfortunately, once you get onto the likes of Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and all these lovely platforms, the ideology is there. And unfortunately, the moderators of whoever it may concern are on it straight away. It's almost like a keyword buzzword. If you say anything that they deem transphobic, you're gone. Yeah. No matter who you are, you're gone. Yeah, and yet the ones coming from the other side of it can say what they like with death threats, rape threats, and just about any threat they jolly well like. And no, that's fine by us. That's not hateful at all. That's perfectly acceptable. So once you've got that kind of situation in place, it's very difficult to break down that barrier and educate people. There's a lovely word that's been circulating Twitter for a little while. It's called ipsedixitism, and it's an assertion of fact with absolutely no substance. And ipsedixitism is basically what a lot of the trans ideology is based on. There's absolutely no fact within the assertions. But if enough people believe it, it becomes fact. Fiction becomes fact, and that's where it's dreadful. Yeah, and that's how these things creep into societal usage of language.
Well,
and then
when we talk about language in all of this, one of these athletes that is behind a lot of that is a professor who wrote their dissertation on reasonable assertions. Like their whole life is revolved around lying and convincing people to get what they want.
Exactly. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? That kind of, I mean, fancy doing a doctorate in something like that and then basically admitting that you're a lie. Well, tossing it off as that you're heroic in what you're doing. It's just
and yet the
same
incredible.
Person, and yet people are not seeing it.
And the same person is basically childish name calling.
Oh, I know. I see it. I see it regular.
Yeah. Like,
I know.
Wow, you get
it's
to
pathetic.
keep your account. They said once that all cis women should die in a grease fire, and that was allowed to stay.
That's fine, isn't it? On Twitter, that's not a problem. Yeah.
And to me, it should be banned just for using.
You state that sex is real. You state sex is real and immutable. You're off. You're banned. Goodbye. But you can ask for women to die in hell, and that's perfectly fine. Oh, it's just unreal. It's unreal. It makes my blood boil. It really does. Really does irritate the hell out of me. I mean, I'm strong-minded, strong-willed, but I'm not exactly strong-bodied anymore because 80% of it doesn't work very well. But having said that, it doesn't stop you seeing what reality is. And if I try to deal in reality rather than the victim side of things, I'm making threats and assertions. It just, I don't see the need for me to even go down that road because there is no need. I've reasonable intelligence. I don't need to resort to childish techniques and name calling. That's done in the school play yard, isn't it? So it's an unbelievable situation where the rantings of somebody like the person in question, and I know who you mean, is but their hundreds of thousands of followers think it's fantastic, and there's likes galore. It's just insane.
Well, I'm not going to mention their name because they're so narcissistic. They
No,
don't need any more attention.
I know who it is.
And I think everyone else does too. They claim to be the poster girl of trans athletes. So,
yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I'm not going to repeat the name. Right? There's no point in it.
Tina, it's so refreshing talking with you today.
And you too, Beth. It's been fantastic. All I say is nobody gets off rent-free in my head. That's how it works. I don't let them live in there. Nobody lives rent-free in my head. I just don't allow it.
A friend said that to me earlier today about living rent-free in their head. I love that. It's good thought, Yeah. We really do have to rise above all this crap and just know who we are and where we stand and stay there. Stand up, speak out, put your stake in the ground, as Linda Canada would say. And we need to fight for our rights to just be.
Isn't it incredible that women are fighting for the rights to be today? That's all that has gone on for centuries and centuries. Women needing equality and rights. Getting the vote in the UK in 1918 for over 30, 1928 for over 21s, and then all of a sudden the erosion has started on women's rights to have equality for men coming into the women's estate and then taking over those rights and eroding them. So women cannot get on; they can't get a level platform. There's a Labour LGBT plus group who are saying that we've now got equal men and women on our board. It's a board of 12. It's a board of 12.
Okay.
Sorry, no, is it 12? Hang on a minute. No, 16. It's a board of 16. There's 8 men, 4 women, and 4 trans. So there's 12 men on the board and 4 women. So they're passing off as an equal board. Now, none of the men are medical. Well, have not had surgeries. So let's put it that way. So they haven't got dysphoria. They're just portraying themselves. In other words, transvestites are getting a right good deal out of this. They're getting a right good deal. They're getting notoriety. They're getting themselves having a name change to transgender, and it's going down an absolute storm because it's an absolute fashion accessory now. It truly is a fashion accessory, and they don't have to do too much to get into women's positions, and that's just insane. It's not about diversity, that and inclusivity. That's just taking over. It's just taking over. If they were genuinely dysphoric, they would have women's rights at heart.
Yes,
because if that's really trying to be as a woman, they would have women's rights at heart. But none of them seem to have women's rights at heart. I have, and many of my contemporaries who are transsexual have women's rights at heart. But we're, like we said much earlier, aren't they? We're the ones who are discounted now. We're the pariahs. We've got what we wanted to do, but they want more. So we're outnumbered 10 to 1 here in the UK, or more probably, and we're not seen as valid anymore. We're a troublemaker for stating reality. So the abuse I get online is absolutely unbelievable. But it comes with the territory with sad people, unfortunately. So I can handle it. It's no big deal to me. But again, I've got to be careful with my language too. My day, which is quite sad, really. Otherwise, I'm off Twitter too. It's like, oh, well, we don't like that. You've been transphobic. It's impossible for me to be transphobic.
So crazy.
Being trans, if the literal meaning is what the trans ideology want you to believe, then I'm hating myself. No, I don't. I quite like myself. I'm all right with me. So it's a non-starter, isn't it? It's a ridiculous assertion once more. So it carries no weight and meaning with me.
Well,
It's just that some of the abuse is quite nasty. But hey, it is what it is.
I'm ready to
That's what
stand
you get.
beside you
That's
and
what you
shout,
get
the
for
emperor
being
has
on a
no
woman's
clothes.
side.
Yeah.
The emperor has no clothes. Exactly. That is so true. It's so true. You know, it's yeah, unbelievable. So social media has got so much more to sort out within its own framework and parameters.
Oh, most
It really does
definitely.
need to get a grip of itself. It does.
Yeah. It's
If you're going to allow everything,
authoritative, it's Orwellian, it's crazy.
it surely is Orwellian. You're quite right. I mean, there's so many great quotes that women put on there with the Orwellian theme on it. It's fantastic. And yet, all the good dialogue comes from women. All the good dialogue comes from women, and all the threats come from the male state. Unbelievable, isn't it? So, you know, shouting, threatening seems to be the only way they gain any traction. Or ridiculous statements on biology, absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of it comes from blue ticks and blue tick women as well. So it's like absolutely incredible. I've been having a bit of a ding dong.
Well, it's time for us to take the power back.
I want you to take the power back, and I'm right behind women for taking that power back, getting back on the equality track. There's a long way to go on equality anyway. It's not fully there yet.
Exactly.
It needs to go
so why
all
are
the
we
way.
handing rights
It
back
needs
on
to
a
go all the
silver
way.
platter?
So eroding equality. I mean, over here we've been having a bit of a thing with this so-called gender pay gap. It's not a gender pay gap; it's a sex pay gap. Men and women get different rates of pay for sometimes doing the same job, or most of the time doing the same job, and it's absolutely outrageous. So where's the equality in that? Yeah, nobody really there battling to fight for it. Oh, we promote a few women to the boardroom. Well, look at it. I think it's wonderful that the women have gone on in life, and it's they've made a grade which is fantastic, and that should be applauded. But that's the male sort of like patronising. But we've done this for women, we've done that for women. Yeah, they've got there on their own merit, surely. Not because you wanted them there; they've been merit. But then again, there's these executives who say, "Well, I'm a woman now, but I'll come in the office 4 days a week as Bert, and I'll come in for two days as Jemima." And it's like, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And all of a sudden, they have one of the highest paid executives, so that the women's pay grade goes up because of those, or the rates of equality go up. Gender equality pay gap. And it's just, hang on a minute, you just can't be doing this. You don't get men coming down to do the stereotypical women's work. So they say they're trans, they're not going working in care homes and looking after children and doing school runs and the stereotypical stuff that's thrown at women. They don't come and want to do those jobs. They don't want to do cleaning jobs. They don't want to work in schools. The jobs that are stereotypically thrown at women, the male are not interested in it when they've trans. So this is why the pay never seems to go anywhere. It's insane. I could talk for hours on it, but I'm not going to go down that road too much.
There are so many branches to this tree, and yeah,
it is. But for every tree, it has a series of roots that mirrors it, so it just gets tangled down the rabbit warrens, and the darkness is where it all is. It's like we're in the canopy with it all. We're not in the open branches. I mean, we have a season of the year. For you in America, it's fall. We have it autumn, and the leaves fall down, and we can see exactly what the tree is all about. But the rest of the year, when the tree grows its leaves, we can't see what's on it. And this is what we've got. This is the analogy we've got now. Everything's done in the deep, dark branches of the tree. The activism has really darkened it. It's really darkened it. It really, truly has. So that once bright tree now become a gnarled old oak tree.
Right.
Dark and twisted. It's become dark and twisted instead of open and free with lovely long flowing branches.
Indeed. That's really good.
With fruit at the end of it. Lovely fruits. So we're back to where all the apples fall, isn't it? And the rotten ones. So,
exactly. That's a good way to round out our conversation. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to the audience to hear from you, Tina?
I think I've been quite expansive in what I said. I think there's a lot for the audience to sort of like digest,
yeah, for
decide
sure.
whether they like it or not. Then some may wish to vomit it back up, others will go, "Well, it was a satisfying meal." So I don't know. There's quite possibly plenty of other things to be discussing, but we can leave that for another day, as well as
yes, when we can get you on video again, I
into,
would love to
once
do
you get
that.
onto the video side of things, and make it easier to talk. I mean, like I say, talking to somebody that's safe is a lot easier than doing it on the phone. So once we get the technology sorted, we'll get back on a face-to-face conversation and do it that way, and then you can distribute it the way you do it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure the audience does too, Tina. Thank you so much for speaking out.
Beth, for
Look forward to it again.
No, thank you so very much, Beth. You take good care of yourself and speak soon.
Bye. Stay well.
Okay. Bye-bye.